Hello, everybody. Thank you. I don't get a little introduction, I guess, but I'll give it myself. So, thanks for including me on the panel. First of all, I know nothing about boats. I've learned a lot in the last 2 days about boats, more than I probably thought I ever would learn in my life. So thank you for that. And I guess I don't know too much about the ocean now that I've seen so much from you guys about it in detailed scientific speak. But I do like and I appreciate the value of an opportunity, and also the forward-thinking ideas, both that we're trying to do here as well as in any industry. And so that's kind of what brought me here. And so again, my name is Nishant Bagadia, and primarily probably came to Randy's attention through our startup called Health Travel Technologies. We formed back in 2006 here in Silicon Valley, and we're right down the street here at Market in California. And basically we've been powering the international, what we call global healthcare industry or medical tourism industry, with software and services to enable our clients to move patients across borders for healthcare. So we've been doing this, and some of our clients move hundreds of patients per month across countries for particular procedures. And most of our clients are hospitals and or other parties involved in the industry in that workflow of moving patients. So we've been actively working towards that and continuously growing. But I guess the main reason for that background is really to say that some of the experiences, perhaps data that has influenced my understanding of the industry, is kind of what's going to hopefully come out here. And then, of course, again, thanks to Randy and the team here for bringing me to speak with you guys. Because I think this is a cool conversation, and I think we have a lot to learn about and sort of ask in terms of questions about what is feasible and realistic and profitable and I guess in the end accessible for patients, because that's really our #1 target in the industry. So I guess this is that. Okay, so today I'm just going to talk about, before we get to questions, really medical travel. Mark and Peter were able to tell us some background there, and I think some great data that we already saw. But you can talk about medical travel the way I see it, some of the problems, challenges in the industry, as well as some of the ways that we have niche opportunities in the industry from what we've been seeing in the last 4 or 5 years, as well as medical travel on a boat. And then seasteading medical travel opportunity, how do we merge what I've seen in the industry perhaps to what we can do with seasteading, and kind of ask questions around that, and then the future. So medical tourism, I just wanted to define it for us because I'm sure we've all heard many different things. I certainly have. Medical travel or tourism occurs when patients travel from their home location to another destination, specifically for medical intervention or surgeries. And so it's not expats living abroad who may need a medical procedure. It's not us traveling and also needing emergency care in a different country. It's traveling for the care. And tourism is in parentheses because both in the academic circles and literature that I'm involved with, as well as in the industry and press, tourism is really a misnomer. And so we're not traveling for any type of tourism, and I'll go into that a little bit more when we talk about the procedures. We're really traveling for the medicine, so it's medical travel. And to date, it's been a lot of talk is international. It's been a hype in the U.S. In an exciting way, trying to in one that can get financed, if you will, for the last 6-7 years, and there's a lot of buzz around it. But in the EU, they've been doing it for 20 years across nation states. In Asia, they've been doing it for much longer with what we call traditional, or in the West we call alternative therapies. And then, of course, colonial medicine going all the way back to indigenous medicine and people traveling specifically for those cures. There's a long history of medical travel if you go down that road. Yes, to respond to the lawyers, I have actually read a few things about it. So. But the other thing about the industry, to go here before that, the other thing I say specifically, it's from their home location to another destination. I'm not just saying international, because the buzzword now and the phenomenon that we're seeing in the U.S. is what we call domestic medical travel. It's happening in a big way. It wasn't on our roadmap for another couple of years, but we're seeing a lot more patients like you and I being offered by our employers the ability to go trans-state for healthcare procedures. A good example of that is, you guys may have read, or maybe not, PepsiCo just signed a large deal with Johns Hopkins International, so that all PepsiCo employees, which is about 300,000 plus, I think, are now able to go to Baltimore for cardiac procedures and complex orthopedic procedures, no matter where you're on the world, plus their families. So you can imagine, again, me going from San Francisco to Baltimore is not much different in terms of a lot of logistics and what goes into it, me going to Mexico or Europeans going to India for healthcare. So domestic medical travel is coming on board with a lot of players. And in the industry, as Mark alluded to, and I think sort of Peter, we're getting a lot of press, some of it good, some of it bad, some of it accurate, some of it not. I'm not here to necessarily talk about that, but USA Today talking about the travel trends, top travel trends, medical travel, economists talking about political economic theory around this. Deloitte, as we saw the reports from Peter, have sort of talked about the numbers and quantifying the growth, and 35% growth and 15 million travels in the U.S. going by 2017. McKinsey having reports on what are motivators for U.S. patients. Center for Medical Tourism Research in Texas is now an academic institution trying to focus on literature around this industry. The Joint Commission International, as some of you guys may or may not know, is basically the same accreditation institute that qualifies hospitals in the U.S. is now qualifying hospitals abroad. So what my point here is not to talk about the accuracy of these different players, but the fact is that in one sense, they're all very much U.S.-centric. And much of our understanding of medical tourism, the hype for it for a lot of people, not necessarily in this room, but in this country, has been, oh, this medical tourism is a great opportunity, but we forget to understand that it's very much a global industry. And I'm going to talk about this one number here. There's 9,185,508 physicians, apparently, in the world, maybe a few more as of yesterday. No, so this is a WHO report. I'm sure there's about 10 million physicians in the world, let's say. But the key is that there is about 92% of them are outside the United States. And that means a lot of things for both us and probably for Seasteading here, in our company, in our industry, as well as Seasteading. For example, we have a couple clients in India and Kenya who are basically sending patients back and forth between those two countries. Absolutely nothing to do with the U.S. Our clients in Mexico are receiving most of their patients from Canada. Some are getting 100 patients per month for particular procedures. Colombia, their top 3 GDP growth factors this year is medical tourism, and large investments in large corporate hospitals and centers of excellence in that country. So there's a lot of equity, a lot of investment, a lot of real hype as well in places outside the U.S. with physicians and doctors outside the U.S. And in our world, in health travel technologies, that's really exciting because we're trying to create a global connected platform through our software solutions so that all these 92 physicians, 92% can connect to each other and cross-refer so that there's no longer any one patient who can't get health care because they don't get it locally. And so in the world of Seasteading, this is exciting as well now that we think about what does 92% mean for us. One is, as I think Mark mentioned with Cuba, the idea of being able to get resources like that are outside the United States to come onto Seasteading in one way, and we can talk through what is the good and bad of that. But also the fact that putting up ships not just outside the U.S., as the engineers have showed us, there's different places we can put it around other countries where healthcare systems need it, and there's a scarcity of resources there. So that's here, but then these physicians, as I and our team travel the world over the last 4 years. We kind of go and we've talked to probably over 200 hospitals and physician networks, and I probably can't say those all accurately, so I'll just go with the English. They're all saying, just send me patients. And this is very true of what we hear, and that fact of just send me patients, which is really what doctors are focusing on for the most part, is the medicine, sort of makes a lot of people excited in the industry. And there are a lot of players that have come about saying, hey, you know what, all we got to do is send doctors patients. So there's this thing in the industry called facilitators. We call them medical tourism facilitators. They're basically like travel agents, but for medicine, so care agents, I don't know what you want to call them. But they basically become the middleman between patients and hospital networks, and kind of if you or I inquired about a procedure, they could kind of give us information, kind of place us in somebody in their hospital network. TPAs, PepsiCo, self-employers, insurance, they're all basically sending these referrals to these doctors and through multiple different channels. And through that also comes the business model that sort of have been standard so far in the medical tourism industry, which is as follows. Basically, the doctor or physician is going to have a set retail price on procedure, and then the facilitator or whatever patient channel is sending the patient gets some sort of commission off that procedure. So the more patients I can send, the better it is, because the doctor and the hospital make their revenue, their top line, and I make mine from the commission, which ranges anywhere from 10 to 25%. So again, that has brought a lot of players to the industry who are saying, hey, I'm gonna get involved and send 1,000 patients a year just to this hospital, make a lot of money sitting in my garage managing virtually like this healthcare network. It's not really how it works, obviously. So again, I'm not gonna go into how medical travel works, but a lot of what our software has been doing for the industry is trying to take that process from the moment of referral all the way to the patient and back, and sort of say, okay, what goes into both managing a patient from end to end, as well as the right business model that's going to make this profitable. And I think some of those ideas can be translated to when we talk about how we're going to build this medical travel on Seasteading. So what are the problems and challenges that come with that? And the idea of just, physicians are best at conducting their medicine. So the before and after is really, we have to understand that medical travel is a business. It has to be run like a business. And so first and foremost, healthcare didn't have marketing 10, 20, 30 years ago the way it did now. Sorry, can you bring that back? I think I hit escape on mistake.
Oh, okay.
There you go. I'll take us there. So healthcare didn't have marketing 10, 20 years ago. Most of us were just either going to whoever we're covered by in our insurance plan, or we have an injury and we go down the street. But now in global healthcare, marketing is a very big deal. We ourselves are helping clients with a lot of video, social media marketing to really help people understand what their options are and connecting doctors and patients like never before through marketing efforts. So again, we're going to start thinking about that, what that means in terms of setting up a brand for whatever procedure we offer when it comes to Seasteading. Operations, it's not point and click. We're not going to Amazon and choosing a procedure, looking at doctor's reviews and being like, okay, I want my bypass surgery, and then we're done, right? No, there's a lot more that goes in that process that it's not easy, but it's been simplified through other means that we have to explore and make sure that we're thinking about what goes into actually the cost of getting patients back and forth, not just the medicine itself, but everything before and after, and continuity of care afterwards. Financial services, of course, we're talking about multiple currencies, that's obvious, but then insurance claims being involved. As much as we all want to get away from it in the model of sort of free governance, insurance is going to be involved because a lot of people are still covered, and so we're going to have to face that that brother, if you will. Results, just like any business, we have to be transparent. So outcomes of whatever happens in Seasteading and or any medical travel business has to be exposed, which is a good thing because, so the second most important thing I'm sorry for the back if you can't see it down here, it says medical travel must be treated as health care. And so what's probably missing for a lot of us here in the US is that idea of, I'd have no relationship with my doctor. Our CEO had his back surgery at Stanford, and that was after 8 months of like malpractice and other types of appeals he had. He had a major surgery there, and he left and never heard from his practice follow-up, a question about how everything went ever again. And it was a pretty expensive procedure. And so why is relationship missing from healthcare? That's sort of in our mantra, and I think if we can think about what Seasteading can offer in terms of bringing customer service in a different way to patients, it could be a pretty nice niche, as well as technology, which we'll get into a little bit more. So those are some of the challenges, but I think that there's a lot of, and we'll get to specific challenges that I see about procedures on a vessel, but I think there are a lot of growth areas too in the industry, which I'm pretty excited about, which we've been seeing. And some of them we can talk about in our Q&A, how this how this applies to Seasteading. But first of all, customer service again is very important, and how to offer the sort of what we call the patient care coordinator role to be in contact with patients pre and post op. If they're going to come to a Seasteading vessel, if they're going to go abroad for care, there has to be obviously a lot longer lead times and post-op times to be in connection with them. And the nice thing is that a lot of this is virtual, so either Seasteading can sort of connect with sort of virtual on land, if you will, care coordinators for this and not have to take that cost themselves, or perhaps maybe even Seasteading could become a vessel that provides that service to the rest of the world from their ship, where we can employ a call center for healthcare because the industry needs it. And then the second one is price competition. Thank you, Peter, for taking away my example of Narayana Hospital. That was one I was going to talk about, but is it much louder now? Wow, okay. Sorry. So price competition is something that's growing, and its price is reducing and quality is staying the same and or increasing. NH Hospital, as Peter did mention, I think their average procedure price for their cardiac bypass is $1,500. I was just talking to their director, Chidevi Shetty runs that hospital, and he's trying to get it down to $800 per procedure. And so that's really serious because, as Peter showed in that graph, it's even for India very cheap, and to foreigners they're going to offer that procedure for $6,000 to $7,000 US dollars. So nobody's competing with them with a 98.9% success rate, as well as a 1.4% mortality rate, which is I think 3% lower than the United States. They're really obviously owning that space. And like them, there are others that can compete when it comes to the world of medicine, because now it's like countries competing against each other in terms of price. So as healthcare becomes more and more, as medicine becomes more and more of a commodity, we have to remember that it's not necessarily price where we're going to win out, let's say in the Seasteading, and we'll get there in a few slides. The other one, on the price part though, I think that's why medical tours and medical travel is interesting, because we can collaborate in terms of where patients can go for certain procedures when we want to have cost savings. Technology, as I keep bringing it up in different ways, now I want to talk about it in mobile solutions, is huge. It is the future, not just of all of us with iPhones here in Silicon Valley. I'm actually talking about in emerging, developing countries. One of our clients and partners is a company called MedAfrica. I don't know if anybody's heard of them, but they're out of Kenya, and they right now have created an app for healthcare information for Kenyans and Ugandans, I believe right now are the market, who are downloading this app to basically get information on just basic symptoms that they might be feeling, or treatment options for things that you don't need a doctor for. They've had 80,000 downloads, I think, and they want to get to 5 million downloads by the middle of next year. And they're partnering with a lot of providers there. So because everybody there in Africa has a phone, if not a smartphone, as they're increasing. So what that means for us, we're now the sort of HTT is the option for if any of those people actively using that app need a procedure, they go through us and we place them in a network of hospitals anywhere in the world. That's huge, and that's more and more people like them and more networks like them that are using technology to get connected to procedures that they need. And now again, we can imagine if a Seastead is either off the shore of Africa and or here off the shore of Silicon Valley, it doesn't mean that it can't be placed through other partners through these technology networks like that. So exciting things there on technology, of course. And then this one, I don't know how it plays into Seasteading yet, but overall in the industry, data. It's so important, not just transparency, but a global database of pricing, a global database of procedure cost, and a global database of what providers are available to me and what physicians are available to me. Part of our mission, through our technology and connectivity, is having that be exposed to everybody for free, because we all want to be able to compare our prices. And that Stanford doctor example I gave you, he doesn't even know what the price of his back surgery is, because insurance is just clouding that for them. So data is huge, and being sort of in front of that is a huge thing for the industry. So medical travel on a boat. What are the critical questions, really, is what I wanted to ask here, and really about procedures. So again, I want to keep saying that medical travel in the industry, the way we've seen it with our patients that we move or help move for our clients, the procedure is what's most important, and that's what they get sold on and or go for, and then the travel comes after. So when it comes to doing a procedure on a boat, I think, Mark, you showed some good examples of things that may or may not work. I might be more skeptical than on some of those than you are, but we can talk about that over a drink later. But But the first is, stability. So the stability of water, and again, that engineering picture you showed, and engineers, I'm sure we can talk about how procedures are being done stably. And Peter, you showed that, is it the comfort cruise? That's interesting, and I didn't know much about that, so it'll be interesting to explore what can be done. But really, you do have to ask, can I do a bypass procedure on a boat? Can I do a orthopedic procedure on a boat, a knee replacement on a boat? And if you can do it, are the consumers going to be excited about that? I mean, we have to think about perceptions, whether it can be done or not. Does everybody want to go to the comfort cruise and get their bypass surgery done? Because whether you tell them it's so stable, and engineers have figured it out, again, where the comfort cruise differs is that where it's needed procedures for the Navy, these are consumers who do have a choice, and we have to understand that we're talking about consumer behavior and perception here. So stability is very key. The second question, legally, the lawyers gave us some great thoughts to think about yesterday. But when it comes to procedures, who is responsible for my legal outcome when it comes to healthcare? And that's a really important question, because as much as I think in the philosophy of seasteading as well as in medical tourism, when we're trying to get away from some of the legal limitations of our country, we've seen a lot of patients who actually want to make sure that there's some government in some way accountable for any legal malpractice or adverse effects they have. So we're going to have to think about that when it comes to, okay, if something does go wrong, where am I taking my case? And what country's flag do I have to go and have that court case with, for example? Cost, not just cost about the many things that we've been seeing. It's obviously costs might be high, but cost when it comes to medical tourism, everything gets transferred down to the price point for the patient. That's the only way this business is going to be profitable and work. So we're not going to be competing on price with NH Hospital in India, obviously, but we do have to think about not just the cost of maintaining the ship, which hopefully in the end doesn't all get translated into the price to the consumer, but what about the cost of all the inventory that's used in the procedure? A lot of pharmaceuticals, a lot of medical equipment, heavy machinery being run, the energy being used to run this machinery. I mean, you can't have downtime, a single second of downtime in any medical equipment that's being used in the middle of a procedure, obviously. So there's going to be a lot of costs that we have to overcome. Dependencies on, obviously, what is the benefit and advantage for doctors to be practicing on a boat? I think, Mark, that was interesting to hear about Cuba and that example. But yeah, we have to understand, getting people out of their home and practicing on a boat. What's the advantage then? What's the advantage for them? And then again, how does that change the other factors here, like cost? Accessibility. I think we saw the helicopter, but again, what happens in an emergency if there's an adverse outcome in the middle of a procedure? Can we fly somebody out? And then insurance. More and more insurance companies, like what Peter mentioned, Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina, are starting to cover more members to go abroad for care, but they're also very specific as to what countries they're going to allow their patients and members go to, and what type of accreditation these hospitals have. So if we don't have that from our clinics, we're going to lose out on that sort of market share. So something to think about, but doesn't mean we can't overcome it. So I don't think there's a singular solution here, and that's not what I'm trying to suggest. But I do want to bring up something that I don't know if anybody's talked about yet, because I haven't really been a part of any conversation until now. But the one that I think is really important is looking at a procedure-specific solution to seasteading on a boat. I mean, medical tourism on a boat. And I want to talk a little bit about stem cell treatments. There's probably other treatments that you guys can help me with that we can brainstorm that have similar advantages in the way I've sort of developed my thoughts on this, but this is what I'm familiar with. So stem cell treatments are absolutely incredible, and not just the ones that we've been reading about and seeing on CNN, but really what stem cells are. So why is it exciting for me to talk about for seasteading? The first is that it's inaccessibility in the U.S. There are some private companies, and actually one lab that we're working with that is providing the stem cell treatments across 10 facilities in the U.S. However, the FDA is still not behind it in a big way, in a very advanced way. Asia and some parts of Latin America are 10 years ahead of us. I don't know if we'll ever get there when it comes to stem cells and the way it's being deployed at the clinical interface. So inaccessibility in the U.S. is something that we can get around with stem cells on a boat. Low price competition, this is really important. Because of the challenge that I mentioned, if we have one, we got to make sure that it's not adding another one. So yeah, it's inaccessible in the US, but if it's being offered somewhere else very cheap, then well, we're not going to get to that price point. But stem cell treatments average price anywhere from 20 to 45,000, even in Asia and a lot of other places. And it's being done for people who don't really have the option for that procedure locally, and or if they have like a desperation, we call it desperation tourism sometimes, at least it used to be called, where they've kind of tried a lot of other options, and the stem cell treatment might be the next, the last one in some cases. So it doesn't have a lot of competition for price, which is I think very exciting. And at the price point of $20,000 to $45,000, you can tell in the business model I mentioned that we can actually make some money off of this when it comes to rev share on bringing that kind of procedure in at high volumes. It's easily administered. This is so important. Again, Mark, we can probably talk about some of the ones you mentioned, but I'm not going to be advocating initially knee replacements and other types of invasive procedures. The way stem cells work in terms of the treatment, if you guys don't know it, basically it's first extracted from bone marrow, because that's where a lot of our stem cells sit or reside, and there's a lot of technology that now just do that with a single injection. So there's a single injection in the bone marrow, it's extracted with a high concentration, sent to a lab where it's expanded, proliferated, multiplied, and differentiated into whatever cell that they're trying to regenerate, and then it's re-injected into the patient. So it's all allogenic. Allogenic? Yeah. It's your own cells, not somebody else's. So it reduces infection, and basically, for the patient, then the experience is a couple injections. And I admit I haven't had it, but I'm sure bone marrow extraction is a little bit more than just an injection. But nonetheless, it's not very like it's not like a lot of other procedures. So somebody's mentioned to me yesterday phage therapy. That's interesting. So we can talk about other things that are like this, that are minimally invasive and easy to administer. The marketing niche is huge. We have an opportunity to create a marketing brand around the fact that this procedure is being offered, in seasteading. And I really think that in order to advocate how medical tourism has grown for hospitals that have been our clients, they start with one procedure, and then they get patients to come for that procedure and become a center of excellence for that procedure, and then patients go back and talk about that clinic, and next thing you know is you realize that clinic also offers XYZ procedure, and so then people start coming for other ones. But you have to roll it out, because this is marketing with a lot of other players involved. So if we can create a niche around the idea that now there's stem cell treatments available to you off the coast, that could be something that is a huge opportunity. Customer service around it is pretty interesting, because these are a little higher end procedures. So luxury kind of customer care around this can be a nice niche that we can kind of appeal to, and growing success. There's so much research being done on it that I probably don't understand, both in the medical journals and across the world, on the success of these clinical trials and treatments. So yeah, I guess that's my example of one, and we can talk about more later, or if this is not going to work, but that's just one idea. So yeah, I guess in closing, we just got to think about how we go, where we go from here, at least in my mind. One is partnerships and collaborations. Let's not forget that there's a lot of people who've been in this industry doing a lot of exciting things, failing and succeeding. A lot of networks like the Med Africa I mentioned that we can partner with. So it has to be dependencies on other people who are already doing this. And that's the only way it's going to work, in my opinion. Continue the discussion and conversation. Thanks for inviting me here. I'm excited to kind of continue with you guys down the road here to figure out how we can make this work. And lastly, again, just social media marketing. I think as soon as we can figure out if we're going to have this be part of, let's say, somebody else's boat, because I don't think we should have a whole boat dedicated to medicine, by the way. That's too expensive. But if it can be attached to somebody else's boat as a clinic where you just do stem cell procedures, as soon as we have that sort of signed agreement, we should start marketing it and build a lot of buzz around the fact it's coming in a couple of years, just to get the message out. So yeah, as we say in our company, medicine's a global business. So let's think globally, and I think we can get there. So thank you.
Nishant might have the most information, and that that is, I wonder when you put these together now for non-seastead medical travel, but looking forward to seasteading. What about liability issues for those here on land who make the arrangements, who act as the middleman for these medical excursions, for malpractice, for example? Can it end up coming back at you, and are there insurance companies that are insuring for those risks already?
I'll take it. Yeah, no, that's a good question, and actually, you kind of gave some of the answers. So insurance is involved in some cases to sort of cover the malpractice up to a certain amount. Like in the U.S., for example, you're only covered up to $200,000, just so everybody knows, for malpractice. So you can't get much more than that, and that's probably one of the problems a lot of people have. But abroad, there's not really a limit on some of those. But for the players, those facilitators and or people who are enabling patients to go, in HIPAA is a privacy act by the United States that basically involves like regulations around making sure patient privacy is maintained, as well as like the healthcare process is compliant with the government rules. They call them business associates to healthcare. So if you're a business associate to healthcare, there's certain rules that you have to follow in the way you manage data and the way that you sort of make the patient accountable for the procedure. So, for example, what we do, we often have, you have to have a patient sign that they're going to be under the jurisdiction of the provider. So, if you're going to Mexico, you're under technically the provider's jurisdiction. If you're going to go to India, same thing. But you have to make the patient accountable or take accountability yourself as a business associate. And so that's usually in the paperwork and how each associate might do that.
And that hasn't been put to the test, so that someone sues to say, well, notwithstanding that I signed this, it was malpractice, and you really the one that put me together with this malpracticing physician in Mexico or on the high seas.
Yeah, malpractice hasn't come up. What has come up is complications and sort of infections from disease. And it's really interesting the way that we see it from inside our industry versus the way we all read about it on the news. And often on the news we get like these blowout crazy cases that somebody gets an infection, it's going to spread, and they went to some Wild West doctor who did some crazy procedure. Whereas for us it's a lot different because, as I said, most of these hospitals and doctors abroad don't have the same limitations on acknowledging that you actually made a mistake or taking a patient back, because here, if you acknowledge it, again, you have so many costs if you say that it was my fault. Whereas there in Mexico, we had a client who went there, had a lap band done, which is a weight loss surgery, and came back to the U.S. and got an infection. The infection actually we found out was because it was they were a smoker and they never reported it. So nothing to do with the procedure. But B, we told the doctor, and he actually said, no problem, happy to take them back and help them with whatever they need. It wasn't like they were saying, oh no, we're gonna let them go, because they can do that. There's no rules and limitations. So we've actually found it, malpractice hasn't been an issue because we haven't dealt with that. But in adverse cases, we've had a few of them. It's been a lot easier of a process than it has been, at least in the U.S.
What are the largest procedures which are currently being used in this industry, and what do you see as the key sources of growth?
In the industry, medical tourism generally.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know, and maybe you guys have more research on this too. You guys can answer what you guys have been reading. It's really different. It really depends on source country and destination. It's been interesting because, for example, in the U.S. initially, let's say 7 or 8 years ago, it was a lot more elective, maybe some dental too at the time. Whereas in the last couple of years, it's been a lot more uninsured, going for things not just elective. We have complex orthopedic, we have high-end procedures, we've even had transplant procedures and even oncology procedures that patients have gone for abroad. And it's because of certain things politically that's happening here, where you have more uninsured patients, or you have insured patients who only covered up to a certain amount, or there are procedures that they want that aren't elective, but they just aren't covered by insurance here. So that's here. But then in our patients in Kenya and the ones in Yemen, they're not going for any reason other than the fact of scarcity of resources. And for them, the NH hospital example that we gave, the $1,500 hospital fee for a cardiac bypass, for the Pakistani patients that go there, that's a 10-year salary. It's not cheap. So it's not cost savings. So we have to understand that depending on where the patient's coming from, the need for procedures really differ. And for them, they're going for a lot of things that you can't get. There's only 7,000 doctors and 45 million people in Kenya. So there's a huge scarcity of even like basic care that they might have traveled for. So I don't know if that answers it, but I've seen it, at least in our industry. That
From the US, what are the key sources of growth? From the US, what are the key sources of growth?
You guys have probably read some more on that. And
Come to next year's Seasteading Conference, you'll find out.
Mark, you probably read some stuff on, or you have some ideas on that?
No, I actually, I don't think really there's any specific thing. I mean, we talked about in 2009 cosmetics, and I think dentistry, especially in going to Latin America for dental care, that's a big thing. And I think, you know, the one thing that was surprising to me in my own research was the popularity of these executive medical checkups. It seems like a very non-invasive type of thing that could be done on a Seastead.
Yeah.
So.
Let's take one more question from Gabe in the back and then go to lunch.
Yeah, thank you. What I see as being, this I guess a logistical question regarding this, is the volume of care that you can handle at a time. Because being on a Seastead, it's not like a clinic. You can't just walk out and you walk out, you walk in, walk out, and you're done. There's a lot of, you're either going to have to transport them there, or there's going to be a lot more care that they will have to stay on the ship. And so to get a lot of volume, you're going to have a lot of doctors. I just see that really exploding the logistical costs of making that effective. And I'm wondering if there are any, if you shared that concern of how to actually logistically make this work.
I do, and I did point to the variety of possible things that you could do with a focus on more on consultations, which aren't invasive and you can leave after you're done. So yeah, I think that's one crucial thing about scaling up is we have to find things that are not just highly invasive medical procedures to occupy our time on the Seastead.
So certainly follow-up is extremely important. It's not as simple as the patient goes in, gets his procedure, goes home. One thing I would say though is that there is an increasing trend towards having outpatient surgeries or ambulatory care surgery. A lot of procedures that used to be you go in, you get your procedure, you stay in the hospital for a week, they tune you up, and then they send you out. A lot of them are now done on an outpatient basis. We're talking about things like lumpectomies, for example, for breast cancer. These are very frequently done same day. You go in and they see that you're recovering well after your surgery and you go home. So there's a fair spectrum of procedures that don't require extensive care afterwards.
Yeah, and I guess just based on my thoughts, I think it's also a volume game when you're offering lower procedure price. So, lap band again right now in Mexico is being offered for like $4,500, which is like half the cost at least, or more than the U.S. But so for that one to be profitable, to meet your top line, to cover your costs, you're going to need hundreds, So I think, and I don't think we're going to be able to, because of the cost of everything else on the Seastead, be able to offer low cost procedures necessarily, and maybe I'm wrong. But so I think a price point on a procedure that requires a little bit higher pricing, again, stem cell was my example, but I'm sure there's others that are 20, 40, more, that we're not attracting people because of the price, but because of something else that doesn't require as much volume on a day, in a year to cover and maybe make profit might be the answer to that too. So
just a quick thing in summing up. Peter's going to start maintaining a website or a wiki where we can continue to accumulate more ideas and have more threaded discussion around this. So again, if you are interested in this, definitely get with one of us and give us your email address so we can keep in touch with you. Thanks.